No evidence of slave ships? That's a question. Shalom. Welcome to another no evidence of slave ships. Shalom. I'd like to start out by saying Barakatah Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai Ba'Shem Rechah Kodash. Welcome to another live lesson. The name of this one is No Evidence of Slave Ships. It's a question mark. And this is based off of a video that Elder Apostle Tar did called Part 1, Read More, Minimalize the Middle Passage, Second Exodus. And Elder Apostle Tar was speaking about this Moor dude that pretty much was saying that there was no evidence of the slave ships. Now if you're actually looking for an actual slave ship to be still in pristine order as it was first made, you're not going to find anything like that. But there's plenty of evidence of these ships, the wreckage of these ships, and the discovery of these ships by different scuba divers, that have found remains of these different ships that were used, in the Middle Passage, dealing with the transatlantic slave trade. And we're going to go through a few articles that I found, doing some research, just based off of that alone. And one of the articles that I came across, which I remember, was an article that Elder Henrietta did years ago, and Lord Zul will get to it. We'll get to that. A lesson he had did based off of the remains that were found of this one particular slave ship. But let's just get to it. This is from the New York Times. It says, Alabama historians, the last known slave ship has been found. And what you're looking at in front of you is a list of the family or descendants of a slave, an Israelite slave named Charlie Lewis. All right. It says a family tree listing the descendants of Charlie Lewis, who was brought from Africa to the United States on the slave ship Clotilda. The captain burned the ship to conceal evidence of the illegal smuggling trip. And this is what happened. A lot of those ships were being burnt or destroyed because after a certain period of time, it was illegal to bring slaves into this country. But Esau was still doing it anyway. So that's why the evidence, you ain't going to find the pristine ship that's still, that was a slave ship back then, 200, 300, 400, 500 years old, that is still floating around now. It says, over the years, this is dated March 23, 2019. Over the years, the hunt for the remains of the last ship known to have brought enslaved people into the United States has been fraught with a mix of tumult and hope. It says there was a discovery last year of wreckage that, after much excitement and international headlines, was determined a false alarm. Hopes were raised, then dashed, then raised again, not only among marine archaeologists, but also among the descendants of the ship's human cargo, many of whom make their homes in a tiny South Alabama community called Africatown. Then on Wednesday came an announcement from the Alabama Historical Commission, another shipwreck, one of many marooned under a muddy stretch of the Mobile River, was almost certainly the Clotilda, a wooden vessel of horrors that carried 110 Africans, which are really Israelites, to the United States in 1860, more than a half century after the importation of slaves was declared illegal. The find, historians said, revives a story of unspeakable cruelty, but also the story of a people who somehow survived this indignity and many others like it. The last voyage of the Clotilda from Benin, Africa, to Mobile Bay, Alabama, represented one of the darkest eras of modern history. Lisa Demetropoulos Jones, the commission's executive director, said in a statement, "This new discovery brings a tragedy of slavery into focus while witnessing the triumph and resilience of the human spirit in overcoming the horrific crime that led to the establishment of Africatown," she continued. The discovery was aided by input from the Smithsonian Institution, the National Park Service, the National Geographic Society, and the Slave Wrecks Project, a multinational group researching the slave trade, and comes at a moment when civil rights museums have opened across the South. African American history is also, which is Israelite history, is also finding powerful new expression in the National Museum of African American History and Culture, which opened in Washington in 2016. But the news is likely to resonate most forcefully in Africatown, a working class community of about 2,000 people from north of downtown Mobile. It was founded by people who had been transported to Alabama in the Clotilda's hull, and it was a place where African languages were spoken for decades. All right, as you see it there, they have a plaque there, gravestones. It says more recently the area was hit hard by paper mill closings, but there is a plan to build a welcome center and a museum largely funded by money from a settlement with the oil giant BP after the Deepwater Horizon oil spill in 2010. Although it was not clear whether any of the wreckage could be restored, Councilman Levon Manzi, who represents the area, said he hoped that the ship or parts of it would be prominently displayed in Africatown. You know, so pretty much this is just one out of many different wreckages of slave ships that were found. You know, and there's many. This one is here, the wreck of the Henrietta Marie, dated Wednesday, July 28, 1999. Washington Post reporter Michael H. Cotman discussed his book, The Wreck of the Henrietta Marie. It says Cotman spent 3 years on 3 continents retracing the route of the Henrietta Marie, a slave ship which sank off the coast of Florida in 1700. In 1990, Cotman, an experienced scuba diver, led a group of divers to help retrieve artifacts from the wreck. So they found this particular wreck, the Henrietta Marie, and they actually got some artifacts off of the wreckage, you know, and they have these things because these ships actually existed. You know, the British East India Company, the British West India Company, you know, or the Dutch, you know, West India Company. These different companies, along with others who created slave ships, which they didn't create them as slave ships at first. They were just cargo ships. Eventually what happened, those cargo ships were, as we went into a lesson earlier, they were, what's the word I'm looking for? They were redesigned, so to speak, for lack of better words, into being able to transport human cargo, because that's not how they were set up. But when they found out that the selling of human cargo, mainly the Israelites, was a very profitable business, what they did was they remodeled their ships to accepting basically mostly human cargo. You see? And a lot of those ships that were built back then, you know, a lot of them sunk. You know, they were old. Some of them were destroyed. You know, but there's been all different types of artifacts and different ship wreckages of this particular these particular ships found all over the world. It says 9 years later he wrote a book about his exploration of the ship and the history of the slave trade. All right, and then it goes on. You know, I put all of these in the description box. I'm not going to read every little detail here. You could read it when you get a chance, you know. But the point is that this was another one. We had the Clotilda in Alabama. You had the Henrietta Marie in Florida, off the coast of Florida. We have here breaking ground Smithsonian to receive artifacts from sunken 18th century slave ship. In 1794, the Portuguese slave ship São José wrecked with 400 slaves aboard. Iron ballast and a wooden pulley from that ship will come to Washington, D.C. So here it is. They found some artifacts left from this particular ship that they're going to be showing in a particular museum in Washington, D.C. It says, long buried artifacts from a 200-year-old slave ship recently found off the coast of South Africa will be a primary focus when the Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History and Culture opens in Washington next year. The artifacts, which will be on a 10-year loan to the museum, are thought to be the first ever recovered from a slave ship wrecked while transporting enslaved people. Two of the objects from the wreck of São José, Paquete de Africa, a Portuguese ship en route to Brazil while carrying more than 400 enslaved people from Mozambique in December 1794, are to be unveiled in a press conference Tuesday, June 2nd in Cape Town, South Africa. The iron ballast used to offset the relatively light weight of the ship's human cargo and a wooden pulley block will also go on view when the new African American History Museum opens on the National Mall in Washington, D.C. In the fall of 2016, museum officials say they hope to find more objects from the dive site, where an international team of investigators from museums and research institutions in the United States and Africa has been quietly working on the project since 2010. And you can read more of it. You know, I'm not sure if they have, I guess they probably have, here you go, they have some pictures of the wreckage and some of the artifacts that they will be displaying, you know, in what you call it, in the museum. All right, so let's move on to the next one. This is Daily Mail. Scientists solved the mystery of the shipwreck found under the World Trade Center. Analysis of 3 rings finds ship was built in 1773 in Philadelphia. And this was something that Henrietta years ago did a lesson on, this particular finding, when they brought the buildings down and they started excavating to build the new building. They actually found slave ship remains underneath the World Trade Center, which shows you that even down in Manhattan you have, you know, so-called Indian burials and so-called slave burials and different artifacts that go back to the time when slavery was still allowed, you know, in this country. It says ship was found 22 feet, 6.7 meters below today's street level. Team analyzed tree rings on the wooden ship. Found the boat came from wood cut in Philadelphia in 1773, made from the same kind of white oak trees used to build parts of Independence Hall, where the Declaration of Independence and U.S. Constitution were signed. It says, can I get rid of this? Yeah. It says 4 years ago this month, archaeologists monitoring, and this was 2014, July of 2014, which it was updated in July of 2014. It says 4 years ago this month, archaeologists monitoring the excavation of former World Trade Center site uncovered a surprise, part of an ancient sailing ship at 22 feet, 6.7 meters below today's street level in a pit that is now an underground security and parking complex. Work was forced to stop as excavators uncovered the ancient ship. Researchers were baffled by the vessel, but a new study has finally revealed how old the ship was and how it came to be under the site. And they have here pictures that they took of this particular ship. The entire ship was scanned before its removal to create a precise record of where each of its pieces were originally found. And you can see it here. So you're not going to find an actual ship, or this ship here was actually used to transport slaves. Why? Because those ships are old and the water corrodes them and they break, you know, and they sink. And some of them were done that way on purpose because at a certain point it was illegal to transport slaves, but they were still doing it anyway. The team were able to analyze 3 rings on the wooden skeleton to show the boat came from. But we read about that. All right. All right, you brothers could read the rest. You know, they show you the sites and the different pictures of where it was found, you know, and what they gathered from it. And the last one I have is the Slavery Papers 3, Search for the Slave Ship Leusden. This was updated on March 6 of 2017. The Leusden was one of the last slave ships of the Dutch West India Company, WIC. It perished on its journey from Ghana, the Elmina, to Paramaribo, the capital of Suriname, on January 1st, 1738, carrying 680 African captives, which are Israelites. The vessel hit a sandbank and sunk in the mouth of Maroni River. 664 of its captives died because they were kept in prison in the hold of the ship while it went down. The loss of the Leusden is therefore an unparalleled maritime catastrophe in the history of the transatlantic slave trade. The exact site of the wreck is expected to be in the sandbank area on either side of the river mouth in both the Suriname and French Guiana maritime zone. Dutch historian Dr. Leo Balai, born 1946, Suriname, has authored the account in his book Search for the Slave Ship Leusden, and enlisted the support of authorities from 4 countries to help locate and investigate the missing vessel and all its entrails. You know, and this is what I guess is a map of where they found the ship at. You know? So, you know, you brothers, like I said, you can read the rest of it. You know, but there are, and this is just a handful. If you keep searching, you're going to find more and more. The more you keep searching, the more of these you're going to keep finding. Because there was actual slave ships that were used in the transatlantic slave trade. How the hell you think the slaves were being brought from the western coast of Africa over here to the Americas and to Europe and different places? They didn't have planes back then. You know? It was these ships that were made out of wood. And eventually they would corrode and sink and fall apart. Or they would be actually destroyed on purpose. So these people that say these things, they're idiots because they do no research. All they do is repeat shit that other people say. Without doing a 5, 10, 15, 20 minute, half hour research, he would have found out that there's all types of remains of these ships that they found all over different coasts. South Africa, down in South America. You know, we just read about Guyana and Suriname. You know, we read about one off the coast of Florida. We read one off the coast of around the Alabama area. We read the one, you know, that was buried underneath the where the World Trade Center was established and constructed. And how many more others are there? Because when you type in slave ships, you know, you get a whole list of different ships. So there's plenty of evidence that these ships existed. You know, because it's going back to what? To the prophecy, Deuteronomy 28:68. It says, and the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, meaning you're going to go back into captivity by ships. And that's how the slave trade was traded. They didn't have planes back then, helicopters, you know. They were actually put in ships. The word for ships is anayah ship, men of ships, seamen. Because they had the knowledge of the seas and of the currents. Because the Sidonians, which are actual Africans or Hamites, they actually navigated the seas because they had that knowledge and technology. You know, and this is why they were experts, and they understood about the currents. You know, Elder Apostle Gabar years ago did a lesson on the currents, and more recently, Elder Yashawamba did a lesson on the currents, and he showed it in one of, and he kind of mentioned it briefly in one of the lessons he just recently did. You know, and I'm sure that if you brothers do the research, you'll find all kind. It could be a whole bunch of videos being done on these different discoveries of slave ships and the different artifacts that they find to confound this bullshit that there was no such thing as a slave ship. That's straight up bullshit. But once again, who is it coming from? An Israelite. You know, and it'd be Jake that be trying to really downplay and destroy this knowledge. Some real hateful motherfuckers, man. You know? It's amazing. Let's go back. You know, and it's ridiculous the kind of shit that these people come up with. That's why the brother Rakaya Kwam put, goodness gracious, you know? I mean, I believe that's what he's speaking about, how stupid these people are, man, that are saying that there's no such thing as slave ships. That these slave ships don't. So if they are, where are they? Are you serious? You know? Those ships were not made out of steel or iron like they are today. So they're not going to last as long as the ships would be able to last in these days. They didn't have that type of technology back then. Anyways, and the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, by the way whereof I spake unto thee. Thou shalt see it no more again. And there you shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. And all you have to do is type in slave auctions or slaves being sold, and you're going to come up with all different types of pictures of Judah, Benjamin, and Levi being sold as slaves. All right, Isaiah 22 and 18, which we went over these scriptures earlier. He will surely violently turn and toss thee like a ball into a large country, and this is what and this is why some of those ships sank, because the currents were so strong that sometimes it will cause the ships to run aground or run into rocks, you know, or run, you know, or they might come in a little too close to the shore and hit, you know, something, and end up sinking, taking water. Because remember, they're made out of wood, and the water, that salt water, after a while, it corrodes it. So and you hit anything with some good force behind it, is going to collapse or cave that part of the ship in. And what you think is going to happen? The ship is going to take in water, and then it's going to sink. And that's what we read about this one particular ship that sank, where the whole cargo died, which was this one, the ship Leusden, you know, which was 680 slaves, captives, and 664 of them died. These were the ones that were underneath. That means the rest were up top. So the ones that were on top were probably mostly women that survived this. All right, so it says, and there the chariots of thy glory shall be the shame of thy Lord's house. Let's go to this one precept here, Joel 3:1. For behold, in those days and in that time, when I shall bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem, meaning when the Lord is about to deliver the nation of Israel, because the nation of Israel was apart, the two kingdoms, and now they're being brought back together. So here in the lands of America, where Judah, Benjamin, and Levi were sold, and we came back together, this is what it's speaking about when the Lord is about to bring back the captivity, meaning remove us from the hardcore captivity that we've been facing, beginning from Judah all the way down to Issachar. It said, I will also gather all nations and will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat. And you see that happening right now. The valley of Jehoshaphat, Yahweh Shaphat, meaning that the judgment of the Most High, the judgment of Yahweh. And that's what's happening right now over there in the Middle East. And will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage Israel. And the reason why they're being brought there is to receive the judgment of the Lord for what they did to Israel. Because we read earlier in Revelation 11 how they were sending gifts to each other. So they know who the Israelites are. And they were sending them around and using the hell out of Jake without any recompense. But that's to their detriment, because let's go real quick to Ecclesiastes chapter 8. And I believe it's verse 9. Right. Ecclesiastes 8:9. All this have I seen and applied mine heart unto every work that is done under the sun. There is a time wherein one man ruleth over another to his own hurt. So they ruled over us to what? To their own hurt, because eventually what they did was they pretty much sinned against their soul. And you know that there's no recompense for someone's soul. Once you sold your soul, that's it. You're done. You're finished. Habakkuk 2:10. Thou hast consulted shame to thy house by cutting off many people. And they've done that. Esau. And has sinned against thy soul. So you sinned against your soul. So when you touch the apple of the Lord's eye, the Israelites, you fucked up. Bottom line. So it says, whom they have scattered among the nations and parted my land. And that's what they've done. And they have cast lots for my people. And they did that. Auction blocks. And have given a boy for an harlot and sold a girl for wine that they might drink. And they made the girls into harlots. They made the boys into homosexuals. It says, yea, and what have you to do with me, O Tyre and Zidon? Which Tyre and Zidon used to be run by Hamites. Even though Ishmael is in there today, these Hamites used to inhabit these lands. And all the coast of Palestine, these Ishmaelites, they helped forward the affliction. You know, although Tyre and Zidon today are being run by Ishmael, back then you had Ham that was in there. Would you render me a recompense? In other words, would you pay the Most High back? And if you recompense me, and even if there was a sum large enough to pay the Lord back, swiftly and speedily will I return your recompense upon your own head, because the Lord is not going to acquit the wicked. He's not going to acquit you nations. That's what the Lord said. For 3 transgressions of Edom and for 4 will I not turn the punishment away thereof? Because you have to pay. Swiftly and speedily will I return your recompense upon your own head, because you have taken my silver and my gold, and have carried into your temples my goodly pleasant things. And this is what you did. You took everything from the Lord. The children also of Judah and the children of Jerusalem have you sold unto the Grecians. So you sold the nation of Israel to the Greeks. And you Edomites that took over the land of Grecia, that took over those lands, you actually help forward this affliction. So you got to pay, that you might remove them far from their border. It says, behold, I will raise them out of the place whither you have sold them. So where were they sold to? To the Americas. And what's happening right now? All the tribes are being raised up right now here in America. The so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native American Indians are being raised up right now, right here on the soils of America. Beginning with Canada, North America, Central America, South America, and the Caribbean islands. Bahama, all of that, all of those places on this side of the Western world. And will return your recompense upon your own head, and the Lord is going. This is how He's going to pay you back. And I will I will sell your sons and your daughters into the hand of the children of Judah. And Judah and the other tribes we're going to possess you. So you get mad, you call us a hate group because we just tell you the truth, man. You just got to eat it, man. You just got to eat it. And they shall sell them to the Sabians, which are Hamites, to a people far off, for the Lord has spoken it, because your families are going to be broken up. Your families are going to be sold. Your families are going to be separated. That's going to be one of the curses you have to suffer, because you put that on us heavy, man. You did it to Judah, Benjamin, Levi. You did it to the so-called Puerto Ricans, so-called Cubans, so-called Dominicans, so-called Mexicans. And you're still doing it to this day. The so-called illegal immigrants, as you call them, you separating them from their families, taking the parents away from the children. So you got to pay for that, man. You reap what you sow. And they shall set them to the... I'm sorry, I already read that. It says, proclaim ye this among the Gentiles. So it's going into something else. So pretty much, the name of this lesson pretty much is a question. No evidence of slave ships. So we gave you 5 different articles in different places. Alabama, off the coast of Florida. This ship here was in South Africa. South Africa, they found this particular ship, the São José. Then you have a wreckage that is that was found underneath the World Trade Center when they were excavating it. And they found that particular ship. Then you had the Leusden, which was found over there by Suriname and Guyana. Off those coasts over there. And that's just 5 examples out of many. You know? So these jakes need to just shut the hell up when it comes to speaking on certain things that they have no clue about, without even doing a lick of research. So with that, I pray that you brothers have been edified. To the next time I say shalom. You just got to eat it, man. You just got to eat it. And they shall sell them to the Sabians, which are Hamites, to a people far off, for the Lord has spoken it. Because your families are going to be broken up. Your families are going to be sold. Your families are going to be separated.